Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. My name is Claire, your host today, and I have two guests that one of them is a little bit late, but thankfully I have Angela Kamugasa and Cindy in the studios, and we are glad to have her. Angela, we are glad to have you. I'm excited to host you today. I'm sure you have a very interesting story that you're going to tell the people out there, people around the globe. They're going to listen to you, and I'm sure you'll change a life somewhere. So, Angela, if we may start, what exactly is bipolar disorder?
Okay, just
if we may
okay,
start.
I'll explain from my own experience.
Yes.
From my own experience, bipolar disorder is when I experienced extreme situations of mania. And medically, mania is when you are too excited to a point that it's disruptive. It disrupts your normal life. And then episodes of depressive episodes, and those would happen for a longer period than the normal. It can be longer than a week when I'm depressed. So in simple terms, that's what even my doctor told me, that it is a situation where when I'm excited, it is extreme, beyond the normal, it becomes disruptive. And when one person also gets depressed, so it's a combination of either very excited to a point of disrupting your environment, or it is extreme excitement, in simple terms.
Okay.
So Claire, that is what I can say at the moment as a description of bipolar.
Okay. Thank you so much, Angela. What's the difference exactly besides being excited? You talked about depression. I don't know what depression means. If someone told you I'm depressed, what actually should come in someone's mind? If I came to you and told you, Angela, do you know what? I'm so depressed. What would you understand? What would a layperson understand out there?
Claire, I can't hear you clearly. Is there anything else you are saying?
Kindly use your earphones, maybe.
Okay.
You have to use your earphones. Do you have earphones? I'm asking if someone says
it is being too sorrowful. That's what I can call depression.
Oh. So when you saw a difference between mania and depression is that someone is either sorrowful or too excited, which is being too happy in that sense. So Angela, what is the difference? Is there a difference between depression and bipolar disorder? Oh, so sorry, we've lost Angela, but I think she's coming back.
But I'm right here, so you can go ahead. I'm Diana, the other host, so you can go right ahead till she comes back.
Oh, Diana, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I was signed in, but to the wrong thing. So how are you this morning? Go right ahead with what you were saying.
Yeah, are you with Angela?
I am. I'm with Angela, and I'm with the United States of Africa, but I'm connected with the Haitian American Collaborative. I hosted the last one as well a few days ago, and I'm doing today till 3 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead and say what you were saying, and hopefully we'll get her back on.
As regards to mental health, are you a mental health activist?
I am an activist, and I come from the medical world. I left holistic care, and I'm actually interviewing today on mental health. Somebody, a psychiatrist today. So I'm a very big. I'm also a common council member in my area. So mental health is a big issue that through policies and stuff we work on. So especially with the African community and the stigma to mental health, having a conversation because of the, you know, the traumas that we endure. We even DNA by birth gets some mental traumas just by DNA. So I think it needs to be expressed, especially in our community. But I don't want to take from you, so I don't want to interrupt what you were saying.
So Dana, today we are discussing bipolar disorder. Like I was discussing with Angela before, we are discussing bipolar disorder, and what kindly explain to us what are those symptoms that someone experiences to show that he or she has the bipolar disorder.
Angela's back.
Yeah, she's back, but you can proceed.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue with your questioning, Angela?
Yeah, then I can proceed.
Please do. What was your next question, Angela? Or I can give one. What was your next question?
Yeah, I was asking, what are the symptoms of bipolar disorder? If someone says they have bipolar, how would you get to know someone has bipolar? What are those symptoms that show when someone has bipolar?
That's actually a good question. I'm not a medical professional for mental diseases, but bipolar, I would just assume. I'm not going to say quote coherently, but I'm going to assume that it's a display of very erratic extremes, a display of unconscious erratic extremes of emotional behavior is what I would contest to it.
Okay.
Is that okay? Does that sound right? Maybe?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dana. Angela, getting back to you, because you have experienced this before. So what are those symptoms that someone experiences when they have the bipolar disorder condition? What are those symptoms that someone might see and they are aware and they get to know that someone has bipolar?
One of those, like I'll also relate to what I experienced. When I went through it, I experienced rapid speech, and rapid speech is very common. You just find yourself talking, and it's like you need to be sedated for you to keep quiet. And then another symptom is lack of sleep. It's insomnia. I've also interacted with some people in my work as a mental health activist. I've interacted with some who can tell you they've spent 2 weeks, day, night, no sleep. So some of those symptoms show that there is a problem, that you're dealing with a situation of bipolar. But of course, the professionals are the ones who can decide, because even with bipolar, there are types. So they're the ones who would assess and decide what kind of bipolar disorder one has. Yeah, but those are some of the things that I can say offhand, some of the symptoms.
When you talk of types, what exactly do you mean?
When I told you types, I mean, now like for me, I was diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder. So that has a lot to do with my moods, right? With the way my mood is. Such that when the doctor was helping me manage the condition, at the time when I was still taking medication, the medicine they were giving me was a mood stabilizer. So that my mood is stable and not erratic. And yet there are other people, they just have different kinds, like just plain bipolar disorder. Yes.
So how is bipolar disorder?
But also that kind of question.
No, you can go ahead. You can go
How
ahead.
is it what?
You can go ahead with
No. I just wanted to explain to you that the different types can also be explained better by a medical professional person.
Yes. So how similar is bipolar to depression and other mood disorders?
Repeat the question again.
How similar is
Claire,
bipolar
repeat the
disorder?
question.
Yes, how similar is bipolar disorder to depression and other mood disorders like anxiety? How similar are those?
Maybe the bit of similarity is that definitely, because if it is about anxiety, although I wouldn't really call anxiety very similar to bipolar, because someone with bipolar even you exhibit grandiose ideas. You think big. You can even imagine you're the president of Uganda. You can even imagine you have the security detail of the United States, Air Force One, those things. But now someone who is anxious is not thinking like that. That is the difference. The person who is anxious is actually struggling with inferiority complex.
Okay.
And not only that, but they are also afraid of doing stuff which they would ordinarily wouldn't have been afraid of. And sometimes also anxiety is triggered by trauma.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you so much, Angela. So when it comes to treatment of bipolar,
But then every condition is different.
Yes. So when it comes to treatment of bipolar, how is it treated? How does someone get treated? Are you injected? Are you given tablets? How do you get treated when you go to a medical facility, a mental health facility?
Again, I'll keep referring to my own experience because I have a lived experience. The kind of treatment that I got, because I'm writing a book on bipolar, how my recovery journey. So my recovery journey, what I went through for treatment, I was put on medication. But like I said, that is a doctor to decide the kind of medication they give because we are all different people, right? So the medication I was given, some of it I had to take for 5 years, a period of 5 years. However, my doctor would review me and then they would reduce my dosage as I improved, as my mental health improved. And then other things that I did for therapy, I would engage in psychosocial therapy. And at the moment, one of the things that I'm doing a lot is engaging in a support group. I have a support group called Heart to Heart, and we meet and talk over our issues, and it helps us feel better. And I also had to see a relationship counselor on my recovery journey. So those are some of the things, because it has to be holistic. We also need support from families, support at the workplace, support in the church. It's a holistic approach when you want to help somebody who is dealing with bipolar.
Okay. Thank you so much, Angela.
I see someone asking a question. Did people notice changes in my behavior?
Yes.
Ramsey is asking. What I can say is that not immediately. They didn't notice immediately. They didn't notice immediately because some people thought I was just being troublesome. Some people thought she's weird, but we don't know why she's weird. And they were thinking, I don't know. They were not really, they wouldn't point a finger to it. No one easily could tell that I have a crisis until things got out of hand, when the rapid speech became intense and I had to be sedated. So if it's about medication and injectables, that is the prerogative of the doctor, and also depending on how a patient will react to medication. But in an emergency situation, normally you're given injectables because you will not take any medicine that needs to be swallowed orally. You have to be taken orally because you're really not in a good state.
Can I ask you
I
a
hope,
question?
Ramsey, that is adequate.
May I ask you a quick question?
Please go ahead.
May I ask you both a quick question? This is something that I speak with mental health and health overall. I just want to know, do you add or deal with diet to help, like in a holistic way that you say? Do you ever look at your diet to help chemically balance your body? That's my question to you guys.
For me, about diet, I just make sure that I eat healthy. And by eating healthy, I make sure I take plenty of fresh juice, vegetables. We have plenty here in Uganda. And I try to reduce on the amount of fat that I take in. I don't do frizzy drinks. Things like alcohol, I don't do alcohol. Maybe an occasional glass of wine, but otherwise I don't do alcohol. Yeah, just to make sure that I eat right. And then I make sure I walk often to keep healthy.
Okay,
And
Ramsey.
then at the moment, actually, I'm off medication.
Okay. Ramsey is asking something else. She's asking, how do you explain to someone your bipolar condition, such as your employer, family members, or a partner? How do you open up to them to tell them, you know what, I have the condition? Do they just see you by themselves, or do you go up to them and tell them?
Okay. With employers, because I'll talk about a situation in Uganda. With employers, it depends on the kind of work environment one has. At least one of the places I can speak confidently about is British Council in Uganda, British Council Uganda. Allows people to engage if they have a crisis, to the point that their medical insurance covers the staff members, their psychiatric care. So I think it wouldn't be right to keep quiet, depending on the work policy and also depending on the law of the land where you are. Because some people actually discriminate against somebody with a mental health challenge. So they would throw you out of a job. So that is where the challenge is. However, family members, because or your partner, family members need to be in the know, because actually they should be your support system. Because when you get a crisis, they are good to people. They should be the people who get you into hospital when you need the emergency admission. And if it's your partner, you have to tell them the truth. The difference is, I can also speak authoritatively about some of those things, because, for example, I will say about a partner, I got married when I didn't have bipolar. So I didn't have to explain my mental health situation then. But then later on, as the years went by, I actually got the disorder. So when I got the disorder, my husband saw it. It played out right there before him. He saw it. And the truth is, he and myself, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't understand what was happening. But what we did after seeking medical support, we also did a lot of reading. And he would do reading at the time more than me, and he would even bring me articles, information about bipolar. So depending on the kind of relationship you have, it's very important that you tell the person, because when a crisis happens, they are the go-to people. They will be the next of kin. But I think you also need to open up to people who will support you. Not every family member will be supportive.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
what I can advise.
Thank you so much, Angela, for that clarification. When it gets to stigma, how does someone with the condition, bipolar condition, deal with the stigma? How did you, in your situation, how did you deal with the stigma? How did you deal with it? People around you, neighbors, something like that.
How I dealt with the stigma, I'll refer to a situation when I actually had an episode, and I called my neighbors all sorts of names. And, like I told you, rapid speech. So what I did after the episode happened, I actually went to my neighbors when I was feeling better, and I explained to them that what I said at that time, I didn't mean to say it, but I was actually not well. I wasn't mentally well, and I actually apologized. But I also used it as an opportunity to educate them about mental health and mental health challenges. And another step that I made, because in addition to being a mental health activist, I'm also a journalist. So another move that I made as a journalist, I wrote about what I went through. In our local media, I have done some of it in international media, but I wrote about my situation so that people can begin to be comfortable to ask questions. And actually, people have been asking me questions. And then eventually, I started non-profit organization with other two friends, which is called My Story Initiative.
Okay.
In addition to that, I also work on different boards to continue creating the awareness. And I do that quite a lot, even online, mental health awareness, so that people can understand that this is something that can happen to anyone, and there's no need for us to stigmatize people.
Okay. So, for how long did you pass through the situation? For how long did you have bipolar?
While I was on medication, it was 5 years. Then after that, I have learned to take better care of myself without medication, without taking medication. And how I have done that is by being intentional that I have. I avoid dwelling too much on negativity, because how a man thinks, that's who you are. So I decided negative thoughts out. If I'm not feeling well, I take time also to rest, and I take time to also talk through my challenges.
So, when you're off medication, should I assume you don't get a relapse? You're normal, you keep on having a good diet, having a rest, and then life moves on, right? Should I assume that?
Maybe I'll give you an example of an incident when it was after the diagnosis. I had gotten pregnant with my last baby. When I was 7 months into the pregnancy, I got a relapse. And from the time I had conceived up to that point, I was on a drug. So I wasn't taking any medication. And when I got the relapse, I went into hospital with my husband, had a chat with the doctor, and then the doctor asked me what I wanted to manage the situation. And frankly, at the time, I didn't want to take medication, and I told him so. However, he also told me, you know what, if you are okay with the medication, because I asked him, will that medication hurt my baby? If it won't hurt it, but if it's going to hurt my baby, no, I will not. So he assured me that the medication wouldn't hurt the baby, and he told me to discontinue use 3 weeks before the due date. And that's what I did. So it is not a guarantee that someone will not have a relapse. But however, if you take very good care of yourself, and I said it's a holistic thing, our thought processes, the kind of company we keep, the kind of information we also take in, a holistic approach, it can help you not to have a relapse. But it's not a guarantee that you won't have a relapse. But as of now, I haven't had it.
Okay. So, I mean, let me ask you this question. Is everyone prone to bipolar disorder according to the kind of lifestyles that we live? Are we all prone to bipolar at some point in life?
Well, what I can say is that anybody is prone to a mental health challenge. And I don't want to specifically point out bipolar because there are many disorders, but some of the triggers in life, I mean, like this COVID situation, I'm sure part of our audience can agree to that. The COVID pandemic situation was too much. People were on tension, people were anxious. To date, world economies are crawling, they're on their knees. Some businesses have closed, people have lost jobs. So depending on how much someone can take, it is so easy to get a challenge mentally. Because some people, unfortunately, during the lockdown, you saw the news, people were committing suicide. Some of the teachers were committing suicide. They didn't have jobs, and yet they have families to feed. Yeah, so everybody is prone, but I can't say specifically prone to bipolar. I can't say that. However, I can only say that everybody is prone to a mental health challenge, depending on what they are also going through. Because trauma is one of the things. If somebody has experienced trauma.
Okay, thank you so much, Angela. Asking from your experience, you say you're off medication, you eat well, you have to choose the type of people you relate with, you have to choose everything in your life to stay on the positive side. So should I also assume that if I chose to live the life you're living, if I chose to imitate, would I say that my chances of getting bipolar are so minimal, or it can still come for me whenever my turn reaches? Like they say, you can never avoid fate.
Like I said, what might work for me in some instances might not work for another person. And I'll just give a simple example. For example, I don't want vigorous exercise, and someone else might want it, and that's what will work for them. For me, a good walk in the neighborhood, I'm happy, you know. And also, depending when it comes to what to eat, some of these things, they are professionals who are specialized in that, who can tell you what is good for your body type, you know, and they analyze the needs of your body. So it's not a guarantee that everything I eat is what will work for somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah, in a lump sum. But however, the things that I can say, which are really, like, it's really universal. Your thought processes are important. Good thoughts will affect your behavior. They will affect your mood. Bad thoughts will affect you in a negative way. And then one of the things that I did so much is also reading my Bible. I got a lot of affirmation from that, because there's one of my favorite verses, Psalm 139, verse 14, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I had to keep reminding myself that I'm beautiful. Yes.
Yes.
So those are
So
some of the
Angela,
things that
in a situation where one has bipolar disorder, but they cannot notice it, neither they cannot get to a professional medical personnel to diagnose the condition. How should someone in such a situation handle the situation at hand?
if they have an emergency.
I'm asking
Claire,
if
are you
someone,
asking if it's an emergency?
yes, if someone has the condition, the bipolar disorder condition, but they do not know they have it, but they have that disease, and maybe they cannot afford to access a medical personnel for diagnosis. How should they deal with the situation at hand?
For me, I think one of the things, every country has free medical services. And in Uganda, we have free medical services in Butabika. It's one of the places I can easily point out. It's a national referral hospital. Surely someone can get transport to that hospital, get diagnosed, and get free medication. At least that is a start. But the problem is, if you do not know, because there are many people who are living with mental health disorders and they do not know, and the disorders are not interfering with their way of life. You see, they are not affecting their relationships, they are not affecting how they work, they are not affecting everything around them. So some people might actually go through life, they have a disorder, but yeah, nothing is being disrupted. Maybe that kind of person might not need the medical attention. But really, if it gets to a point that it's affecting your work, it's affecting your productivity, you must get the attention as soon as possible. And at least I've given that example of free medication and free medical services at Butabika Hospital.
And then something else. Why isn't the bipolar disorder condition, like any other mental illnesses, discussed so open so that people get to know that these things are serious, these diseases are serious, that there might not be some kind of diseases like that they need treatment, like these other diseases, talk of AIDS and the rest. But what do you think? Do you think people are shining away? They fear to be diagnosed mentally ill, or what? Why do you think that
Of
this is
course,
the condition?
but many people, first of all, governments are not yet taking mental health seriously, because as long as the economies can still run and you don't see the effect on the money, because you know money is what talks. If you have a workforce, the big workforce of your country mentally ill, and it's affecting productivity and it's affecting the income, the governments will have to sit on the round table and say, what do we do? But however, in this world where we are saying leaving no one behind, we are talking about SDGs, and the one SDG, Sustainable Development Goal, which I can talk about offhand, is health and well-being. So the issue is when it comes to mental health, why some people will not take it seriously, as long as life goes on, they don't think it's a big deal. But the stigma, because there are many people who are suffering, but the stigma, and many families are afraid to come out because they are saying, oh, our family has to look good. This thing is going to embarrass us. We won't look good out there. And some people will feel my name is so precious. I cannot, have my name stained, you know, with the people knowing that there's mental illness in my family, you know, things like that. The discrimination. And also another challenge is the laws, because also in Uganda, the laws are not very friendly. There are some laws where they will tell you when you're signing a contract for work, in case you are ever diagnosed with a mental illness, this contract is null and void. If you have ever been, or if you're in event you are admitted at Tabika Hospital, please, this contract is null and void. So you tell me how many people are going to be willing to come out and talk and say this is our situation. There are very few people who are willing, because they are saying if I talk, that means my daily bread, I will not be able to access it. There are many reasons why people are not talking, and so consequently also the government don't think it's important. But with COVID, COVID has made many people think about mental health, because the challenges have come to the forefront, and this is globally, they have come to the forefront.
Okay, when you talk about
so
challenges,
that is the reason.
When you talk about challenges, what are those challenges that come with the diagnosis of bipolar disorder? If you may use yourself as an example.
When I use my own experiences, the challenges that came after the diagnosis, first of all, you are ignorant, because I have to admit I was ignorant, very ignorant. I was clueless about mental health disorders, because most people, even though you take a sample with our audience, if you ask anybody, when they think of mental illness, what do you think? You imagine a naked person running around the streets or in your neighborhood. You do not think that somebody wearing their lipstick, very smart, and with her high heels, or another guy with his suit and his tie, that he actually has a mental illness. So I was ignorant. That is a challenge. I had to seek knowledge. Number two, another challenge that I faced, the fact is mental health treatment is expensive. Even though I gave the hospital, our hospital, Tabika Hospital, the National Referral Hospital here in Uganda, as an example, there were times I would try to access medication from there and they had run out. And for the longest time, I actually used to buy my medication. And at that time, I would spend 250,000 shillings, Uganda shillings. Whoever wants to change it to dollars can do the math. But I would spend that every month, and yet I was taking two other types of medication. So it puts a strain on your pocket economically, because you also go through a season, at least I went through a season when I was not working. So you are not working, you are not earning, and yet the condition you have takes a lot of money. So that is another situation. But of course, also another challenge is being able to talk about it. It's hard, because I went through the process of denial. It was hard for me. I didn't want to accept that this is something I'm going through. And of course, also there were people who would make comments, because some of the side effects were weight gain. And when I became overweight, hey, what's happening to you? You know, people making all sorts of insensitive comments. And then I would try to explain myself to people. It was a hard time, but after some time, I said, I think I don't need to explain to them because I wasn't yet comfortable to talk about it. So those are some of the challenges. You actually face the stigma, the discrimination, because that come your way are very, very few. And you're also going through a season where the truth is, yeah, you're going through a season of trying to also adjust to your situation. It was hard for me. So those are some of the challenges. The cost of living is high. The treating is high. When you go for therapy, it's expensive. You go for a session per hour, you're charged per hour. So if you're in that session for 2 hours or more, that's quite a lot.
Okay. So,
and you can't afford it every week.
Yes, yes. So how did you overcome the challenges? You as you, how did you get out as this strong woman, as a mental health activist, to come out and tell people, you know what, I have suffered this, I've gone through this has been me, but now I'm a different person. You can look up to me. If you have a situation, you can change. How? Where did you get a zeal from after experiencing the stigma and all that?
I think where I got the boldness from also is that I would meditate a lot on scripture. And there's one particular scripture, it must be Mark 8, I think, Mark 8 or Mark 5. And I meditated on that scripture. It's about a man who was demon possessed, who used to be in the tombs. And this man used to do self-harm. He would cut himself, and he would be chained sometimes. He would leave that side when he's even naked. When I read that passage in the Bible, I was encouraged when he met Jesus and when he was prayed for. And then he sat at the feet of Jesus and he was of sound mind. He was clean because the people in his community actually saw the difference. They saw the difference from the man who used to be chained and hide himself in the bushes, now to a man who is of sound mind. He's clean and very alert. So I decided if I'm also to get better, I had better speak up. I have come, because also one of the things that encouraged me, I noticed that I would get calm and have peace when I would listen to gospel music in particular. It would really calm my mind, because there was a time when I would hear so many voices, but somehow I would calm down. So I decided this is the time for me to get out and start talking. And the first time I talked about it, it was in a magazine. I wrote a short story. I remember even first talking to my husband about it and saying, is it okay? He said, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and write your story. I wrote it, and then people started to talk to me, coming in my inbox, asking me for a doctor's contact, how to support a loved one. Then the next step is when I even had a photo shoot. My next article that I wrote, I had a photo shoot. I felt so nice. I was pampered, new clothes and all that. It was quite exciting. So I told my story, but the more I told my story, you're asking how I got the boldness, the response I got, the feedback. When a woman would write back and tell me, I got my life back. I decided, let me leave this low-paying job. Let me go study. I was just overwhelmed. I actually reading these people's letters, and I said, oh my God, if this is what is happening, I will keep going. And I realized the more I spoke about it, actually Uganda is not the same. I'm not saying I'm the first one who started speaking about mental health in Uganda, but Uganda, the conversation around mental health, the year cannot end when we haven't had at least 5 or more engagements nationally. So I thank God, because information is power. When people have information, they are empowered to meet the point of need and have solutions, because not every situation that you need to be admitted. There are situations, as long as you have a loving family, supportive, you can actually be treated even though you get the medication, but when you're at home and you don't need to be admitted. But we also, I have gotten the boldness to speak more and more because it helps people get the help that they need. And that has inspired me.
Thank you so much. Our other guest is here. Thank you for joining us, David from Ghana. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if your network is stable. He has been diagnosing his network issues from Ghana. So I don't know if you could hear me. Can you hear me? David, can you hear me? David. Hello, can you hear me? Wow, David has issues with his network, so I think we shall proceed with the conversation between the two of us. Angela, you said so far for for some time you have been off medication. So should I assume, or should our audience assume that bipolar disorder is actually curable? Do you think you're cured from it, or you think there's something that might happen at the end of it all?
For me, I can say that I'm well, I'm healed, but the doctors don't say so. Because even though you Google it, even as our audience, bipolar disorder is a chronic illness. Bipolar disorder, I remember even the doctor, when he sat me down, he told me this is a condition for life. He was clear. And then he also told me I'm going to take medication for life. But I had to make certain decisions because when you are somebody who also reads quite widely and you also engage with different audiences, I got a privilege to engage with some medical professionals, and they were talking about side effects of psychotic meds. And some of the side effects, especially with prolonged use, people develop hypertension, then others get diabetes. So the people end up having to treat two conditions, health disorder, and then they also have maybe diabetes or hypertension. So when I had that engagement and then also talked to other people who maybe it's a relative who has also been on medication and has developed diabetes. There's somebody actually who said my sister had it, a sister of his had it. Then another person I also engaged with, for her, she has hypertension. So I decided I would not take the medication for life on that premise. Because I remember when the doctor reduced my dosage to the really smallest, at that time it was Epilim, which I was taking, and the smallest dosage wasn't available. So I would have to break my tablet into half. And when I would do that and I take the half, I would feel drowsy very quickly. Epilim is a slow release medication. And so when I would feel drowsy, I didn't like to talk to my doctor about it, and that's when I decided that I'll go off the medication. But also medication has a place in someone's journey when you're recovering, if you've had a mental health crisis. When you're recovering, medication has a place because there are some people you will never be able to function minus the medication. And yet there are other people, depending on how you balance your life, you can actually cope and thrive without the medication. But that is something each people in the audience disorder, they have to cross-check with their doctors. They should not take decisions without the knowledge of their doctor. It's important.
Okay. So Angela, in your mental health activism, what is that one thing, that one special thing that you've done for people having that bipolar condition that you're so proud of?
One thing I can say I'm proud to have done is to tell my story. Very, very important, because that way people are comfortable to start telling their stories. And another thing that I have done as an activist is to start planting peer support groups. And one of those that we did actually last year as an organization, My Story Initiative. We went to Budaka. Budaka is in eastern Uganda. There, it's a kind of an urban, rural setting. So we first engaged with the leadership of the place, educating them about mental health and educating them about the importance of peer support groups. Because these are groups where people, caregivers, and people living with mental health challenges come together and talk through their challenges. It's a therapy, it's psychosocial therapy. And you can do it right there in your community, right there in your home. You really don't need any special expert from the diaspora or wherever to come and teach you that. Because every community, they have their needs and they have the solutions. So we planted 5 peer support groups there. And before that, the years before, we've also been planting peer support groups in Mukono, in Wakiso, in Ntinda. One, the main one which I run personally is the Heart to Heart chat. And we mainly do our support group meetings at Relate Counseling in Ntinda. And so that is one of the major things I can say that I'm happy to have done. And then as a journalist, I've also, apart from writing my own story, I've written other people's stories and shown the world that when you give your loved ones support through other people's stories, they can thrive, they can be productive. What's important? Let's love. Nobody has ever been allergic to love. If we love people, our loved ones, people in the community, it is a solution already. So those are some of the things I can say. And the online mental health awareness, that is something I do almost on a daily. Online awareness, that one I do almost on a daily. Yeah, because I know people have questions. Yeah.
So Angela, let me ask you this question. I don't know if there is an answer for it, but nevertheless, let me ask it. Is there a similarity between bipolar and addiction, drug addiction? If someone has bipolar disorder, do you think they are prone to getting addicted to drugs, substances, or?
Some people are prone to it because one of the issues, depending on how bipolar manifests or presents in somebody, some of the people, their libido goes high to a point that they have sex almost, and that's how you will know. And also sex addiction it's an addiction. So some people, actually there's one of the guys, one of the peers I used to engage with, for him he said, how I know things are not good, he must have sex, and it won't be with his wife, it will be with anybody. Yeah. And then also another challenge where the addiction aspect will come is some people who are suffering, who have bipolar, will also spend a lot. There is that challenge of being a spendthrift. They will actually go and spend and spend and spend. Some of them will even go broke, but it's also a way it manifests and presents that, oh, this is, at least when she shared from my experience, or how she said the challenge was when she would have a crisis. She had a shop she was running, but she would give everything away free, everything, and she would go broke, of course. Because when she would be better, then she would say, okay, now where does the money come from? And people would take advantage of her. Yeah, so some of the addictions, yeah, can present because someone has bipolar. But it's not a must that if you have an addiction, then you have bipolar. No.
So, Angela, when you get onto treatment for bipolar, is it possible for someone to get cured of depression episodes, but then stay with the other manic depression or manic episodes, or the other way around, or it's a must for someone to do away with both episodes at the same time?
From my experience, when I was given the medication, it was about stabilizing my mood. so that I'm not at the extreme poles, the extreme poles of the mania, the extreme pole of the depressive episodes. So by giving me a mood stabilizer, they are trying to make you stable. It doesn't mean you will never feel sad. There are moments you feel sad, and it's normal for people to feel sad. It's normal for people to be excited and happy. But the issue is that mood being stabilized by experience. Yeah, that's what I can say from my experience.
So at the moment, let me assume you've been to a situation where someone has had to anger you to the extreme. Because I know you cannot avoid the anger. Something that is involuntary just comes when someone does something wrong. Just comes. I mean, what happens in such a situation? Do you relapse? Do you control it? What do you do?
I found gospel music very soothing. So if I'm very, very angry, I make sure I listen to a lot of it. And one of the things that I have also acted upon to make sure that I'm not in the extreme situation, I love singing. So I joined our choir at church. I sing, and I love it, learning new songs. I find it something that helps me, soothes me. But however, what I've also learned is that it's not also good to ignore a situation when you are not happy. But however, I prefer to talk about it when I'm not very angry. Because when you're very angry, you'll say the wrong words. And normally you'll say words you regret. So I can say God has helped me. I'm at a better place now. But talking about it is important. But talking while you're still very angry is not healthy.
Thank you, Angela. Now I'm looking at a situation where I understand bipolar disorder is one of the conditions that take long to get diagnosed because their symptoms are slow. They come at a slow pace. So I'm looking at someone who's in the village and these symptoms are coming one by one, slowly. This people have no idea where Butabika is. For example, I'm from Barara. People might not know that there is a Butabika here. They've not heard about it. Actually, when they hear about Butabika, they think there are only people who are mentally ill who come here, people who are undressed, like you said, who come here. Someone might not get that skill to be brought here. So what kind of advice do you give such people? Or what kind of help would you want such people to get when such episodes come to them?
Like I said, when an episode is intense, because the truth is there are situations where you might be mentally not well, but it's not a situation that is causing a crisis. That's why psychotherapy is also very important, and that's why I've talked to you about the peer support system. You know, people who are struggling with drug addiction or alcohol addiction, they have groups where they meet as they are going through rehab and talk through their challenges. One of the things that can be done is to have a peer support group. And that is something I would gladly introduce, because we even have now the manuals. I will share with them via your email. I can't share them offhand because I have the links. We have the manuals to help people. Only at the moment they're in English. So people can set up their peer support groups and help themselves. Because when you talk and you share that burden, it is a way of healing. It's a process of healing. However, like I said, the truth is when there is a crisis, because when a mother is not well mentally, her children will be affected. When she's not well mentally, she cannot run her home. When she's not well mentally, that husband has to carry the burden of being the wife and the husband at the same time. He has to play the two roles. He has to be a mother to his kids and also at the same. So You have a crisis, which it would be good though not to wait for it to be too much. Go to the health centers. There are some nurses who have been trained to handle those situations. Go to the health centers, health center folk. They can help. And also in Mbarara, you have the Mbarara Hospital. Does Mbarara Hospital have a mental health unit? Don't you see? They should not fear the psychiatrists. I know in Uganda currently we only have 43 psychiatrists compared to our 43 million population about. So it is a crisis, definitely. That's why we have introduced things like peer support. We have introduced things like us, because also me, I'm a peer support worker. I've been trained as a peer support worker and also as a trainer. So we have been trained to make sure we community so that there's a reduction of hospital admissions. Because even in the hospitals, there's not enough space to admit people. Yeah. So those are some of the things, even though you are in the village, as long as you notice the person is not well, they can no longer look after their children properly, there are some incidents would avoid happening in our nation if we took these things seriously. Because really, a mother who throws herself in the lake and drowns herself and drowns her baby, fine? And if that woman survived, they would look her up. They would think that let's take her first for assessment. They would lock her up. They would treat her as a criminal. But before you make her a criminal, you decide to say, she's a criminal. Before you do that, first assess her. Is she well? These violent situations we are seeing, the recent one is a video of that woman who hit the child like that. Before you even lock her up, get a psychiatrist to assess how we know these men will come and kill their wives, their children. Assess them, because you might think you're solving a problem. You lock them up. When they finish serving their term, they come back and probably they will even be worse. So what are we doing? People need help and we need to know how to support them. And this has also made me remember situations of even our soldiers, the men in uniform. Why kill people? Someone will open fire. The recent one, I think it was in COVID, there was a guy who was armed his wife. Was that man okay? Even though you shoot him, you shoot him and put him out of action, have you solved the problem? Lives have been lost. So we need to find something sustainable that can be done, and we help people, because people can get healed, people can recover and be productive. Yeah.
Talking about getting help and sensitization. I mean, sensitization is well for a broader word, because apparently you have a peer support group, you are a mental health activist, but then how many people are doing what you're doing currently in Uganda, and what kind of support are they offering to the mental health victims that we have in the country? And how far have they gone?
I can't speak for everybody, but at least I can say that, especially when it comes to sensitizing, the Ministry of Health, at least the ministry has made an effort to engage with us, non-profit organizations, to engage with people like me, who are in the mental health movement, participate in the World Mental Health Day. This is the World Mental Health Day. Globally, it is celebrated October 10th. However, in Uganda, we celebrate it November 10th. So the ministry brings us together, and then they give us an opportunity to talk about the activities that we are doing. People like Strong Minds are also reaching out to the rural woman and creating support for suffering depression. And then people like Mental Health Uganda are also helping people, different parts of the country, but also in line with advocacy, to show people, because you cannot empower somebody without educating them, to show the vulnerable groups what they are entitled to as people who have psychosocial disabilities, as people who are suffering mental health challenges, that you are entitled to be treated with dignity. And when I refer, I'll give an example of our Mental Health Act 2018 of Uganda. It recommends that when somebody is put in seclusion, a patient, they should be in a room which has toilet facilities and bathroom facilities. At the moment, that is yet to be a reality. It is still on because the rooms of isolation in our national hospital have a slab of cement for a bed. They don't have a toilet. They don't have a bathroom. And when people are thrown in isolation, they are stripped naked. So we are yet to see some of these things happen. But at least also people who are facing the challenges are being educated that this is what you are entitled to. You should not be beaten like you're an animal. You should be treated with dignity. You are a human being just like everybody else, you know? Yeah, those are some of the things. So awareness is still being done. Advocacy and awareness and sensitizing people, it is something that will be done even long after I'm gone, because no one will ever know everything. You'll always find people who don't know. You'll always find. So you have to keep educating people. Like I've told you, it has to be broken down in sections. Even in schools, our teachers supported schools, but how have they been equipped as teachers to handle in the new normal, as we call it these days? How have the teachers been equipped? Have they been given psychosocial support? Our teachers. What about our children who are gone back to school? How are they being helped to adopt to the new normal? You see, so when you talk about education, the education ministry has to come on board. The Ministry of Health has to come on board. Then we have to talk about our army. It has to come on board. We need an army that is sensitive to the needs of its population. Because if you're protecting your people, you have to understand how to deal with your people. But also the army, they also have needs. They are also human beings. Just because they're in uniform doesn't make them less of human beings. So they also need to be supported. How can they be mentally healthy? Some of those men or women are suffering from trauma. They call it, is it post-traumatic stress? You know, they've been in war zones, war situations, but how are they supported so that they are assimilated into society and we avoid situations of loss of lives where really there are situations where it can be avoided. Yeah, so different departments of our country and all over the world, this is not just about Uganda, it's a global thing. We need our people to be educated and it can't stop. That's why I said, even when I'm long gone, yeah, the awareness continues.
Yeah, talking of, we talked about high school, schools, teachers, children, people, students getting this information of how mental illnesses can occur, how they can be prevented, and how you can live on if you have the mental illness. Personally, when I was in high school, I think around S2, there is a girl who was in our class who had a mental health issue. And I remember one evening after prep, she began talking things to her uncoordinated. She was talking about some graveyard somewhere. She was running around. And you know, because we were kids, and we never heard about this, we laughed. We saw her and laughed. Like, okay, so what's happening to her? We laughed about it. And you know, surprisingly, our school, every time we were done with exams, and that's last week where we had to rest, to do what? They used to bring people to talk to us. But surprisingly, they had never brought anyone called a mental health activist to take us through mental health issues or anything like that. They always brought people to teach us about menstruation, people teaching us about puberty, people teaching us about such things, but they never brought anything called mental health education. So what do you think should be done in the long run? If you brought in Ministry of Education, what do you think they should do to ensure that school, should they make like a subject in school to teach about mental health or something?
I think now we even already have biology. They talk about the brain. How can you talk about the brain without talking about mental health? How can you talk about the brain and you even tell me the parts of the brain, but you cannot tell me when there is a disorder? You see, this is a module, although it is a big subject on its own, but it is something that can be planned and incorporated in our education system. Yeah, because if you're going to tell me I have a brain, because I always tell people, when people ask me about what is mental health? Mental health is how you feel emotionally. That is your mental health. Whether it is good or bad, that is your mental health, right? And as long as you have a brain, unless you don't have a brain. So any human being here on earth who has no brain, they don't have mental health. Mental health, you have a brain. So our education system has to change. It has to change and incorporate those aspects because they teach us. And after you have taught me, you have not told me when I'm not well, what happens? So that is something that has to be incorporated in our education system. However, another practical way of teaching people about their mental wellness is because I've already given you the concept of the support groups. We can have these support groups in the school. There are children who are actually struggling mentally and they are on medication and they are in school. How can they be supported? Instead of laughing at that child, if the school administration is aware this child has this kind of situation, they should invite people like me and other people, and we come and give a talk, an awareness talk. However, to make the children comfortable and fit in school, we can mental wellness clubs. Just like the HIV, actually, someone told me she started they call it the Red Ribbon Club in school. So there's educating people about HIV and AIDS, and it's in form of a club. It's about, they educate children about the Girl Guide thing and their clubs. So it can be a club, it can be incorporated in the school. And also for the teachers, I insist also the teachers, because if a student knows and the teacher doesn't know, it cannot be implemented. If the teacher knows and the head of the school does not know, it will not be implemented. So it starts at the top. They have to all be educated. And also the schools can open groups for their teachers. Teachers are human, they also have challenges. How can they be supported? They should talk through those things and find solutions. So I would also encourage peer support groups for teachers in our education system. It can be done because these are things which are affordable. You don't need billions of dollars to make these things happen. You have the people, you start. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Angela, for sparing some time to share with the global community about bipolar disorder. And I'm sure so many people have learned a lot of stuff from you. We are glad. I'm glad that you came through upon me calling you requesting you to be hosted here. I'm very glad you came through. I'm very excited. And yeah, probably should tell our viewers those last comments in regards to bipolar or mental health in general.
My last comments, what I can say to our beautiful audience, mental health is everyone's business. And one of the best medicines for mental health is love. Just love, just love. Love heals, because even when somebody is really in a crisis, as long as you have loved them, no one ever forgets a kind gesture. No one. Just love. And let's be, because if you see maybe your neighbor has a crisis, don't say it's their business. It is your business. They are your neighbor. You might be even in a separate compound. At least if you know you have a number of a psychiatrist, you just give them the number if that's what it takes. If it means calling up a doctor, please do. Let's be each other's keepers. And let's also learn to take care of our mental health by thinking beautiful thoughts, pure thoughts, noble thoughts, and things that are true. It will be beautiful for us. For God and my country, since it's an international webinar, for God and my country. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank
It's
you
been
so
a
much,
pleasure.
Angela. Yes, it's been 1 long hour and 9 minutes of our chat, which was so fruitful, I guess. So many people have come in, have commented. We thank you, all of you have tuned in, and I'm sure you've learned so much from Angela. Angela, thank you so much. Maybe next time we shall host you so you discuss with us more other details about mental health, maybe not necessarily about bipolar, but can be about something else. And yeah, I shall be glad to have you back because we know information is
Thank
always
you.
coming in. Yeah. So thank you so much. Have a good night. Everyone who has been watching us, good night, good morning, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.